of Turkey. Now, we've been telling you over the past few weeks that really over the past few years that under the radical rule of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey, a NATO member, has become something more like NATO in name only, as it turns its gaze increasingly to the east, to Iran and to Hamas, Hezbollah, and more embraces China and Russia. I've called Turkey almost perhaps a junior member, so to speak, of that gathering storm coalition, as we've called it here in the newscast. Look, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, the charter members of the Gathering Storm coalition of nations, as I call them, which have aligned against the West and Israel. But then you've got junior members like Cuba, Venezuela, Belarus, the Assad regime in Syria, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the various members of that Iranian Ring of Fire. And then there is Turkey. And they're kind of straddling a fine line, folks, in that they have one foot in the West. Look, still a NATO member nation, right? And over the years, they've talked about European Union membership. That's essentially gone nowhere. But on the other hand, certainly a foot and a stronger foot more and more in the East and in the world of radical Islam and alongside tyrannies like Russia and China. And one of the main sticking points there, clearly, is the hostile. That's an understatement, I believe. Incendiary. We can use all the words in the dictionary, folks. Does anyone use dictionaries anymore, by the way? I remember those days as a kid. But look up hostile, incendiary, violent, radical, and that could describe Recep Erdogan's posture towards Israel. I would argue, folks, that Erdogan and his regime in Turkey, it's home right now to the most hostile, vicious, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel rhetoric this side of the Iranian regime. And that's saying something. We're going to break down the latest comments. Some have called it a warning. We call it a warning here. His warning to Israel over the title. In the title, we call it a warning here. And this is all over Hezbollah, by the way, in a potential Lebanon war. But I think you could call it a threat. The threat is implicit, and not the first time with Erdogan. And why is this so important? Why does it matter to you? Well, if Turkey gets involved in a Middle East conflict and turns the rhetoric and the posturing towards Israel, if it ever gets physical, and prophetically, by the way, I believe it will. We're talking War of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38 and 39, more on that in a second. But if that happens, wither NATO. What does NATO do? I asked the same question last week after Hezbollah threatened Cyprus, which is a European Union member nation. What do these Western bodies, I'm talking in particular NATO and the European Union, what do they do if a NATO member nation goes rogue, and I'm talking Turkey, or a European Union member is attacked, I'm talking Cyprus. We know the rule in NATO, right? This is one of the rules of the alliance. An attack on one member of NATO is an attack on all members of NATO. Folks, we may be about to find out some very hard truths, and it's going to be very interesting. And again, that's an understatement to see how this all plays out. But I want to share the latest threats, and more than a warning, I'd really say these are threats from Recep Erdogan towards Israel and why they matter. Real quick before we do, hey, remember, if you have not subscribed, be sure to give us a subscribe here on the Watchman channel. Click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. We'd love to have you here with us every day as watchmen and women on the wall for such a time as this. Folks, it's crazy, but I think it's something like 72%, maybe even more, of our regular viewers, I mean daily, are not subscribed to the channel. So we want to rectify that, needless to say. We'd love to have you here, not because it does something for us, glorifies us, but because the more people that subscribe and like these videos, the more YouTube will send them out and recommend them to people. Why does that matter? Because we do this for a reason. Because in times where good is called evil and evil is called good, Bible times, prophetic times, we want to be a voice for truth, a voice for the Lord. So that's why we want these videos to go far and wide. Again, to give a message of truth in a time where there's so much deceit. So we'd love to have you join us here as subscribers. Okay, let's break down these comments by Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkish tyrant, actually made late yesterday, speaking to the Turkish parliament, if I'm not mistaken. Here's what he said, folks. He said, Israel has set its sights on Lebanon. I'm reading from my phone, Al Monitor, which is a Middle Eastern, a regional outlet. He accused, Israel has set its sights on Lebanon, and he accused some Western powers of supporting the Israeli government's plans to expand the war in Gaza. Israel, this is a direct quote from Erdogan, which devastated Gaza, is now setting its sights on Lebanon as we see. Again, this was a televised address, Turkish national television, to the parliament. We see that Western powers, and these are his NATO allies, right? He's essentially addressing them. They speak differently on camera, but behind the scenes, they are patting Israel on the back and even supporting it. Good. They should be supporting Israel. Then it gets interesting with the Lebanon subject. Plans to spread the war to the region will lead to a great disaster, Erdogan warned. Israel's efforts to spread the conflict, he's talking about Hezbollah, Lebanon, are extremely dangerous. And Turkey stands by Lebanon against Israel's aggressive policies. Now, that was not said to the parliament. That was said in a call with Lebanon's prime minister. We stand with you against Israel. If Israel attacks Hezbollah, which, look, where's the Lebanese central government on this, folks? Hezbollah has formed a state within a state inside southern Lebanon, and the Lebanese government has stood by and watched this unfold. It's to the point where Hezbollah is a more powerful military than the official state military of Lebanon. Hezbollah is the most powerful force in the nation of Lebanon. I'm sad to say it's a beautiful country with a rich, incredible history. But Hezbollah has hijacked Lebanon. And by extension, Iran has hijacked Lebanon. Just as Iran, through proxies, has hijacked Iraq and Syria and Yemen and Gaza. That's the head of the snake, or as some in Israel call it, the head of the octopus, the Iranian regime. So here's some more on Erdogan. He's pledging to support Lebanon in a conflict with Israel. What does that mean? But he also, I have to mention this, two very important points. Again, I'm just reading right off my phone. Pardon me. That's why I'm looking down, folks. This is important. More of the same from Erdogan, but still. He said, it is extremely tragic that countries that gloat over freedom, human rights, and justice have become slave to a, quote, mentally ill person like Netanyahu. So a few things to unpack here. Number one, he's calling the leader of Israel mentally ill. Number two, he's saying that the West, and this is an anti-Semitic canard, the West has become slave to Israel, meaning those Jews, they control the world. The classic anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Erdogan is steeped in that sort of madness. And we've seen comment after comment, action after action from him for years and years, showing exactly that. But then this is interesting, folks. And again, this goes along with a general theme from Erdogan over the years of uniting the Islamic world. Remember, his whole goal is to restore the old Ottoman caliphate. Now, the seat of the Ottoman Empire was Turkey. That was the last caliphate. It was disbanded in 1924. And if you're saying Cala what? Well, the caliphate is eventually a united, or essentially a united Islamic superstate where every Muslim nation unites under one banner and under one supreme leader known as the caliph. Now, the last time that existed was under the Ottoman Turkish Empire. The caliph was the sultan in Turkey, and Turkey, again, headed up the last known caliphate before it disbanded in 1924. Erdogan sees that as the glory days, folks. He wants to restore that Ottoman caliphate with himself as the caliph. More on that in a second, but you see the call to action here by him in this regard. He said, quote, he criticized Muslim majority countries for what he described as their failure to confront Israel. And he said, quote, we sadly observe that the Islamic world is acting lethargically. Turkey stands by the brotherly Lebanese people and government, and I call on other regional countries to stand in solidarity with Lebanon too. He's calling for the Islamic world to unite against Israel. And he's done it many, many times over the past 2 decades. And he's doing it again. A united Islamic world means a united Islamic caliphate. Eventually, that's his great joy and his great wish. And he wants to take a leadership role again, a budding caliph. He'd like to take a leadership role in that. We saw Erdogan go all in on this also at the time of the so-called Arab Spring about 13 years ago now. It quickly devolved into an Islamist winter. But Erdogan was very excited about it, folks, because, listen, his Justice and Development Party in Turkey is essentially the Turkish branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Well, during the Arab Spring, we had the Muslim Brotherhood take power in Egypt, take power in Tunisia, almost take power in other places, gain strength in Libya, gain some strength in Jordan. The Muslim Brotherhood seemed ascendant at the time, and Erdogan was thrilled. He thought, caliphate? And then it all unraveled for the Brotherhood. And then ISIS rose. And Erdogan was allowing ISIS fighters to transit freely between Turkey into Syria. And ISIS declared a caliphate, right? They controlled some 58,000 square miles of territory across Iraq and Syria at the height of the ISIS mini caliphate. That was an area the size of the state of Indiana here in the United States or the nation of Great Britain. It was nothing to sneeze at. So it's no wonder that Erdogan was letting ISIS flow in and establish this in Iraq and Syria. Erdogan saying, you know what? I'll let the jihadis, because there's the hardcore jihadis, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, of course. On the Shia side, you have Hezbollah, who, you know what they want. They want to kill you now, blow you up now. It's jihad now. Erdogan is more of the Muslim Brotherhood mold, where suit, tie, doing it through the proper channels at first. Very patient. And he's thinking at that time, 10 years ago, that, okay, I'll let ISIS and the violent jihadis establish the caliphate, then I'll roll in after they do all the dirty work, and I'll rule over it. And that kind of came crashing down, because not only was the Brotherhood smashed in Egypt, which is the mothership, and don't get me wrong, the Muslim Brotherhood's still very, very active, folks, including right here in the West. But the Brotherhood Caliphate dream smashed. That would have been the ideal one for Erdogan because he's a Brotherhood guy. Then the ISIS Caliphate dream smashed after President Trump, kept his word. No matter what you think of President Trump, he kept his word and he smashed ISIS. That caliphate was destroyed. So the Brotherhood dream, the ISIS dream smashed. Now Erdogan sees another opening to unite the Islamic world. After October 7th, everything's back on the table for him, and he sees yet another opportunity to unite the Islamic world and perhaps be a leader, the leader, ideally in his view, of the Islamic world. Now, he's got some competition there, right? Mainly the Iranian regime, which is not a frenemy. You've heard that term thrown around, right? But a friend, not an enemy, certainly not. A friend, maybe a friendly rival, only in leadership of the Islamic world. Because look, Erdogan, friendly with Iran, and I believe they'll unite in the war of Gog and Magog against Israel. But both Erdogan and the Iranian regime would like to lead the Islamic world. If there is a new caliphate to form, Iran would love to lead it. Shia Iran and Sunni Turkey would also like to lead it. So it would be, no matter who ruled over it, it would have a different look depending on who was at the helm. Sunni Turkey, obviously leading a caliphate, would look a lot different than Shia, apocalyptic Iran leading a union of Muslim nations, which would be more an imamate, I guess, on the Shia end. But these are the two main players in the Islamic world who would like to lead the Islamic world. They've been very clear about it. They would like to lead the Islamic world through uniting it against external enemies. That's the way they'll bring Muslims together in their view. And again, after October 7th, man, oh man, they see this as a golden opportunity because they've not only got Islamic nations, they've got Muslims living in the West who are rising up in cities across Europe, which has a large Islamic population, obviously. In the United States, also in places like New York City, we see chaos in the streets, protest against Israel. But they see Israel as the way, or Erdogan does. Let's unite everyone against the hated Zionist entity, and then we can really plow forward and unite this thing. So Israel's response to all of this, Israel's foreign minister, Israel Katz, accused Erdogan of declaring his support for Hezbollah, which really would be no surprise, right? Erdogan is openly supportive and praises Hamas on a regular basis, hosts Hamas leaders in Istanbul. So no surprise that he'd go all in with Hezbollah. Again, Sunni Turkey and Shia Hezbollah, folks, those differences when it comes to confronting Christians and Jews, the radical Islamists on both sides put those internal divisions aside and unite against the external enemies. We've seen this time and time again. Greatest example, Iran supporting Hamas. But Katz wrote, and again, this is Israel's foreign minister, that Erdogan announced his support for Hezbollah against Israel's threats. He's trying to deny Israel its right to self-defense against a terror organization attacking from Lebanon under Iran's orders. Tough to argue with that. That's exactly what Erdogan's doing. But Erdogan's doing it obviously in an aggressive way. But isn't the West essentially doing the same thing, by the way? Imploring Israel not to strike Hezbollah in Lebanon, telling Israel how Israel can best defend itself, just as it's done in Gaza in the wake of October 7th. Lecturing Israel, intoning to Israel, this is what you need to do to defend your nation. Yeah, we know you're a sovereign nation, but we're going to treat you like a client state, especially the United States. I'm sitting here. I love America. I'm a proud American sitting here in Texas right now. But the Biden administration seems to think it can order Israel around and tell Israel what to do, although Israel's a sovereign nation. And here's the main reason they feel like they can do that, folks. And this is a dilemma of Israel's own making, I'm sad to say. Israel is heavily reliant on U.S. armaments and military hardware. And when you have a situation like that right now, when Israel is battling for its very existence against an Iranian-backed ring of fire, Israel is looking to the U.S. and saying, hey, we need our weaponry or armaments replenished. Hey, America, can you help us out? Here's the problem with that. The Biden administration is saying no, or yes, but we're going to slow roll these shipments. They weren't at first in the first few months of the war, but now it's gotten to the point where they're slow rolling weapon shipments and delivering at least one shipment, not at all. So you get yourself in a dilemma when you become too reliant on another nation to assist in your security. That said, Israel never has and never would ask for American boots on the ground. It's funny. I hear some of the anti-Israel commenters, no blood, no war for Israel. Really? When has one American soldier, other than to build a doomed pier off the coast of Gaza, by the way, in support of the Palestinians, when has one American soldier set a foot on the ground in any of Israel's wars? You can't name it because it's never happened. All Israel has asked of the United States is for, number one, military support. Hey, help arm us against the same radical terrorist forces that want to destroy America. Israel's enemies and America's enemies are one and the same. So it seems to me just plain common sense for the United States to support Israel. Israel's the first line of defense for the West, fighting the good fight, standing in the gap in the belly of the beast for all of us. If they get past Israel, where do you think they're coming next if you live in the West? So number one, Israel said, look, can you help us out? Give us some armaments to win this war. Secondly, Israel has asked the West and the United States in particular for diplomatic support at the UN in particular. And mostly, depending on the administration, the United States has delivered. But under the Obama administration and now under the Biden administration, that hasn't always been the case. And it's been tense. But Israel has never said to the United States, please come and we want American troops on the ground here fighting alongside us against Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, or in previous years against Egypt, Syria, Jordan in 67, 73, 48. Never has Israel said, we want American boots on the ground in Israel. Name one instance where that has ever happened. But you'll have the anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists who will comment on social media and not only on social media, no blood for Israel, no war for Israel. No, not one American should lose their life, or one American soldier should lose their life defending Israel. That's interesting because that's never happened, ever. Not once has an American soldier been on the ground fighting alongside Israel. Not once. Israel has never asked for that. All Israel has asked for, again, hey, can you help bolster our military hardware here? And can you support us diplomatically? We'll do the rest. We'll fight the good fight. And by the way, if you're an American, well, what you hear some people too. Well, what do we get out of this relationship with Israel? Well, for starters, Israel is fighting the fight over there. So our boys don't have to go over there, although obviously they've gone over there frequently in the past 30 years plus, but not because of Israel, because of American interest in the region. But what do we get out of it? Well, I can give you one example. Since 9/11 in particular, hundreds, if not thousands of plots, terror plots, broken up in the United States and in Western Europe, thanks to Israeli intelligence. And that's the tip of the iceberg. So this is not just a unilateral kind of relationship where only Israel is benefiting from it. Far from it. And if you ask anyone in the U.S. military, the U.S. intel community, they'll tell you the same thing. And who really know what's going on behind the scenes and how Israel assists the West in the defense of the West when it comes to intelligence and breaking up these plots. But look, we need to set the record straight on these issues because there's so much disinformation right now and flat out lies that are coming at a fast and furious clip about Israel, even from the right. Look, folks, I'm a strong conservative, obviously, and people on the right side of the aisle these days are turning against Israel as well. And it's interesting because some who would be the first people to line up and blast left-wing, radical, progressive protesters on college campuses. I mean, some voices on the right, they'd be the first people to say these people are godless, secular Marxists. When those same godless, secular Marxists are protesting against Israel and attacking Jews, there's a strange silence in some quarters. I've noticed this since October 7th. But look, God never said it would be easy. And he never said it would be easy for Israel or the Jewish people. Listen, if you know the history of Israel, you know the history of the land, it hasn't been easy, to say the least. So we knew that the time of Jacob's trouble would come, as the Bible calls it. And sadly, there will be increasing attempts by many in the world to marginalize and isolate Israel. Someone like a Recep Erdogan in Turkey, who we've been talking about. Left-wing radical progressive governments who we've been talking about. Obviously, Hamas, Hezbollah, the UN global bodies who we've been talking about, perhaps even the United States, God forbid, depending on the administration. And that's one thing. After the Obama administration experience, I'm surprised, which was not good or pleasant. I'm surprised that Israel didn't do a bit more after 2016, after Obama left office, to become a bit more self-reliant in terms of producing its own weaponry. Now, I know Israel's a tiny nation the size of the state of New Jersey, but the more self-reliant, and again, the IDF is self-reliant. Again, not asking for foreign troops to come into Israel and fight alongside them, never have and never will. We'll take care of our own defense. All they're asking for is the armaments to help them do the job. But I don't know how Israel's defense industry can work in this. They're doing an amazing job on Iron Dome, Iron Beam, the laser beam system, missile defense system. But there's got to be more domestic production, I believe. October 7th and the aftermath, I think, really showed us that with Israel, that more domestic production of the kind of weapons that can keep the state of Israel safe and help it to defeat its enemies. Now, prophetically, as we talk about Turkey, the war of Gog and Magog, funny name, I know. But read Ezekiel 38 and 39 in your Bible, and you will see that ancient names are used: Gog, Magog, Meshach, Tubal, Beth Togarmah, crazy ancient names, I know, but a few of them really ring true to today. Number one, that's Persia. And that is modern day Iran. In biblical times, in the time where Ezekiel wrote, where God downloaded these prophetic future events to Ezekiel and he wrote about them, it was Persia. I believe Persia, modern day Iran, will align with Russia and Turkey and other Islamic nations, and eventually they'll come against Israel. And if you think that sounds crazy, I don't know. Have you looked at the map recently? Have you followed any geopolitical affairs or the way the chess pieces are moving on the board? Never have we seen Russia, Turkey, and Iran align so closely as they are right now. These are three nations, folks, that historically have really been at each other's throats. But Russia, Iran, and Turkey today, thick as thieves, and truly putting aside differences to unite against the West and against Israel. And I think that relationship will continue to grow and develop. It's pretty clear. And all of them, Turkey, Iran, and Russia, right now are on the mountains of Israel. They're perched on the mountains of Israel, right across the border in Syria. And that's important prophetically, because in that Ezekiel war, they will come from the north. They will perish, by the way. Before you hide under your desk and say, oh, my word, the sky is falling. This latter days, that's what Ezekiel calls it, latter, T-T-E-R, latter days invasion force will meet its demise on the mountains of Israel. They won't get very far. But to get to the mountains of Israel, you got to cross over from Syria. And again, Turkey, Russia, and Iran, they're in Syria right now. Their forces. And they're increasingly chummy. I don't know. You could say it's all just a coincidence. I think not. I think we live in Bible times. I don't know when this war is going to come, folks, but certainly things are being put in place. I think October 7th sent it into overdrive in the wars and rumors of war department. October 7th, the Gaza war. We have the Lebanon, the Great Northern War, as I've called it, looming. What happens in Damascus? We're talking Ezekiel. Read Isaiah 17, which talks about a day where Damascus, one of the world's oldest inhabited cities, the capital of Syria, will, quote, become a ruinous heap, and it will cease to become a city. It's not me saying it. I'm just quoting the Bible, Isaiah 17. I know that's hard for people to hear. It's not pleasant, but the Bible's pretty clear about that. So what we're seeing right now are birth pangs, and the wars and the rumors of wars now. And the Ezekiel war, I believe, will come on the heels of these events that are unfolding right now. Eventually, I'm not a date setter. I have no idea when. Could be 20 years, could be 5 years. I'm not saying. I have no idea, folks. I have no special insight into that, certainly. Only God knows. But I'm just telling you that these things are starting to develop. It's pretty clear, as someone who's been watching this closely, who watches it with with watching the news or your phone in one hand and the Bible in the other. If you put the two together, you can say, wow, what's happening right now lines up pretty clearly with what the Bible said would happen. So you're not imagining things if that's your view on it. And that's why, look, here on the Watchman live stream, on my nightly show, Stakelbeck Tonight, we bring you these events from a biblical perspective because, folks, this is not just in the physical, in the natural. Yes, there's a battle going on in the physical, no doubt, wars, everything else. But at the end of the day, it's a spiritual battle. It's truly good versus evil. It very much is. And it's playing out right now before your eyes in the physical, but behind the scenes, there are spiritual forces of good and evil at work. Spiritual warfare is, look, a crucial basic of the Christian life, not only in our own personal walks with the Lord, if you're a follower of Jesus, but in nations. Go back and read the book of Daniel. Read about the prince of Persia and how Michael the archangel, Gabriel, they're held up fighting these demonic forces. It's really happening. And if you don't look at the world right now and see all the just absolute demonic evil being unleashed, then you must not be paying attention. Here's the good news. We're covering this every day here on the channel. We ask you to subscribe. And also, we've got a second YouTube channel, folks. You might be saying, another one? We really do. My brand new nightly show, Stakelbeck Tonight. Now, it's on TBN every weeknight, Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time every night. You can watch on TBN or the TBN app. Stakelbeck Tonight, hitting all these issues and more. But we've got a Stakelbeck Tonight YouTube channel now as well. We've got the big channel here, almost 1 million subscribers by the grace of God. But head on over to @Stakelbeck Tonight. That's @Stakelbeck Tonight. And give us a subscribe over there as well, folks, because we're hitting on many of these issues that we talk about here on The Watchman. And it'll give you a sneak peek at the Stakelbeck Tonight show. And if you like it, we'd love you to tune in. But @Stakelbeck Tonight. If you could check out that channel, we've got some really cool. Here's something to whet your appetite a little bit. We just did an entire show about the Nephilim, and with Rick Renner, the Nephilim and the hunt for Noah's Ark. It's fascinating stuff. So check that out over at @Stakelbeck Tonight. A lot of content for such a time as this. This is no time as a believer to rest on your laurels. And we can be light in this darkness. Leave this live stream encouraged, folks, because we're alive at this time for a reason. You could have been born at any time in world history, but God chose right now for you to be on this earth. And it's a perilous time, I know, but if you're a believer, it's an exciting time because you hear the rumblings, you hear the footsteps of the Messiah, and you know the times we're in. So keep the faith, take heart, be encouraged. God is still in control. Thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.